This is Shaun Brodie. He is with the Queer Songbook Orchestra. And so, before we begin, hold on, let me start recording the backup. All right, we're recording also on my laptop. And who's giving land acknowledgement tonight? Vanessa, did you know who's giving land acknowledgement tonight?
Let me check.
Oh,
Oh,
I
you
am.
are, you are.
I am.
Yes.
Okay, I'm giving it again. All right, well, I gave it earlier, but for those of you who weren't there, if there were any of you who weren't there, here it goes. Um, firstly, the City of Toronto acknowledges that we are on the traditional and unceded territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. I will get the Haudenosaunee pronunciation right. I'll take a look at it after this. Moreover, we are united here on stolen land. We acknowledge the tragedies, blood, and destruction that was brought here and continues to occur. As someone of Korean descent, I am no stranger to the impacts that colonialism has had on culture and family, and will never cease to advocate for those who are oppressed or under occupation. So everyone give a very warm welcome to Shaun Brodie. He's here on behalf of the Queer Songbook Orchestra. And so, just if you have any questions, you can unmute, start talking, you can raise your hand, whatever floats your boat. And yeah, let's get this thing started. So, welcome, Shaun. Oh,
Thanks. Yeah,
and I
thanks so
have
much.
to, yeah, actually, before we begin, let me introduce Shaun. And he is a classically trained trumpet player with a performance degree from University of Victoria and extensive experience as a session and freelance musician, performing live and in studio with acts such as Bazia Bulat, Tanika Charles, Dan Mangan, Patrick Watson, The New Pornographers, Broken Social Scene, Father John Misty, and many others. Shaun has toured internationally and appeared on a wide spectrum of stages, including The Late Show with David Letterman and the Glastonbury Festival. In 2014, Shaun founded the Queer Songbook Orchestra, QSO, a 14-piece chamber pop ensemble dedicated to expressing and uplifting 2S LGBTQ+ narrative. In recent years, this project has expanded to now include the Queer Songbook Youth Orchestra, and this ensemble providing performance opportunities and mentorship to queer, trans, questioning, and allied youth, and QSO Kids, which offers programming designed to nurture inclusivity and acceptance for elementary school classrooms. A collaborative community-based project, the QSO have worked with 200 plus collaborators and toured extensively throughout Canada and were longlisted for the 2018 Polaris Prize with their collaborative album with Vivek Shreya. So, uh, yeah, this is Shaun Brodie. Real cool. Everyone give him a warm welcome, and Shaun, you may take the floor.
Um, Thanks, Hugo. So yeah, I'll just give a bit of background on the Queer Songbook Orchestra and where it came from, how it sort of came about. And I know Hugo and I are gonna have a bit of a conversation throughout this time. And if anyone has questions along the way, I just welcome you to unmute and let me know because I'm happy to chat about all aspects of this. And there might be things that I don't think to bring up. So let me know if you want to go a different direction at any point. But yeah, as you sort of gathered from the intro there, was I'm a trumpet player primarily, classically trained, and was sort of on a path, I thought, through high school and university to want to be an orchestral player. But at some point through my undergrad, I just started playing with, I had opportunities to get involved with like a Latin band and some pop bands and stuff. And I just started to realize there might be more musically that I was interested in than this sort of what I was seeing at the time as a sort of narrow path to being like an orchestral player and this sort of commitment you have to that style. And so anyway, I started playing in lots of different kinds of bands. And my trumpet prof in university at the time, he really encouraged me to do this and be a more well-rounded musical player. um, because I think he was sort of seeing the writing on the wall with how things were changing and the difficulty in landing orchestral, like stable orchestral jobs, and how rare they are, the troubles that traditional orchestras are having, and so on. So uh, I really credit him with being an orchestral player that encouraged me to become something more broad, uh, and to sort of be able to imagine for myself my own path forward rather than just sort of going down what was this sort of well-worn path that might not be that viable anymore. So anyway, once I was done school, I moved around a bit, Montreal for a while, Vancouver, ended up in Toronto, and all the while just sort of playing with whoever would have me. And so it was mostly in the sort of indie pop, rock, folk kind of scenes, um, which ended up being, there was opportunity there. And as a trumpet player and sort of multi-instrumentalist, as I got to, play a bit of keyboard and guitar and percussion and whatever, became sort of an asset to some of these bands that I was working with. But anyway, I did that for about 10 years. And then I started to sort of question the viability of that as sort of a long-term career. It kind of worked when I was younger and just into doing tours and whatever. If it was sleeping on floors and whatever the tour was, I was kind of up for it. But I didn't know if I wanted to do that for another 30 or whatever years. And so I ended up deciding that I would leave music, and I was interested in sort of radio journalism, um, audio documentaries, essentially, which um, now, this is sort of a little bit before podcasts became such a big thing, but it's essentially what podcasts have become. That was really getting my interest in sort of telling still musical stories, but stories that are not that known. Um, so the kind of like hidden stories behind what was happening in the studio or behind certain albums or these bands or artists, I got really interested in becoming a journalist and telling those kinds of stories in interesting ways. So I will try to keep this brief, but I decided to sort of hang up my trumpet, apply for journalism school, and just have a whole new career. So that's what I tried to do. And I applied for school and then just sort of went on telling everyone that I'd been working with that I was going to sort of go into something different now. Um, and then I got the letter back from the journalism school saying that I was not accepted into the program. And the that new door that I thought I was entering just sort of closed on me, and I didn't know what I was going to do next. I kind of had all my eggs in that basket. Um, so I kind of drifted for some months after that and just kind of wondered what I was going to do. I kept kind of doing what I was doing, teaching trumpet and playing with people. And then maybe 6 months later, this idea occurred to me of something I could do myself, that sort of intersected all of these three kind of key pieces of who I was, which was my musical experience, um, my identity as a queer person, and this interest in storytelling and like the backstories, musical backstories that aren't that well known. And that all sort of came together in my mind to form what is now the Queer Songbook Orchestra, which is essentially a small chamber pop orchestra that tells the backstories of queer artists, queer individuals, and how music has sort of shaped their lives and shaped their memories. So we kind of go about it in two different ways. One are sort of biographical stories that will tell stories of certain people, queer artists, and their lives, their careers, their music. And in a lot of cases, stories that aren't that well known. Billy Strayhorn is one that I always use as an example. He was a very influential jazz composer in the 30s, 40s, 50s. He was sort of Duke Ellington's right-hand man, writing and arranging for the Duke Ellington Orchestra, but always sort of overshadowed by Ellington. Uh, Part of which was protection for him to live as an out gay man in the 1940s in New York. Um, so that's kind of one route we'll go in telling stories of like biographical stories of significant artists. And then the other way we tell stories is to source them from the community. So we've kind of had an open call out to us LGBTQ plus communities since 2014 to send us stories of their own queer experiences and how they've been shaped by certain songs. So we'll get stories from people uh, about an experience they had, whether it was coming out or a great love of theirs, or something with their family, struggles with their family, whatever it might be, chosen family. And they're all connected to a song um, that for that person is like shaped that moment or like was kind of the soundtrack to that moment in their life. So what we'll then do is take the song and have it sort of rearranged and reinterpreted to a degree for our like 13-piece ensemble. And then in our live shows, we'll have a guest narrator tell that story, read it word for word in the writer's words. And then we follow that by playing the song. So it all kind of like ties in together and centers around the music. So it's always, in my mind, been a way of sort of uplifting queer experience and queer narrative uh, in a sort of like a respectful and nice kind of way that honors these moments in our lives and that a lot of us share. And I mean, queer or straight, everyone has songs that have kind of really resonated at certain moments in their lives. So it's not been just queer audiences that we play to. I mean, lots of different people come to our shows and can kind of connect to what it is we're doing. Um, so that's kind of what I've been up to for the last 11 years with that ensemble, and it's been a really interesting experience to sort of lead a new project, something that didn't exist before, or something really exactly like it, and try to find a space for it in, in venues and theaters, and to try to like get people clued into what we're doing and that what I think is something that has value. And it sort of speaks to, I think, the sort of entrepreneurial uh, needs of musicians nowadays to be able to not just rely on the gigs that you might get called for or the one job you might be able to land that gives you a career, but how you also might have to use your own sort of imagination and intuitiveness and all of that to sort of, find your own path and work towards something that you feel has value and to find a place for it in the broader kind of landscape, musical and arts landscape in Canada and beyond. Um, so that's sort of a quick synopsis of what the QSO is and where it came from. Um, and yeah, I mean, I have lots of stories from the last decade. I can just keep rambling on, but I know Hugo, there's some other questions, and I'll try to stay on track with sort of what was planned.
Yeah, so we have some questions we can go off of. Um, let's see here. How do you approach curating the repertoire for each performance that you do with the Queer Songbook Orchestra? Like what themes and stories guide your specific selections?
Yeah, so as I was kind of describing, the material itself is sort of sourced largely from the community. So we're not always deciding like we want to do that song or this song. It's sort of we're choosing from what people give us. So if it's we get a story that's sort of centered around the Tracy Chapman song Fast Car, um, then we, I mean, that's a great song and we love doing it. So that's like an easy one to sort of fit uh, into our shows. But some shows have been sort of broader. The theme is sort of a broader idea of queer experience, queer trans experience, and these stories that connect to it. And we can do sort of just go from one story to the next and kind of make a nice night out of it that we curate out of the material that we have in our repertoire. And other times we're a little more direct about a theme. So I mentioned Billy Strayhorn earlier. We've done entire shows that um, is just telling his story. So two sets, intermission. It's just playing his music and telling a longer form version of his story. We've also done shows where we work with queer elders. So we'll have three or four queer elders that for months ahead of time we meet with and talk about their lives, their stories, and what they would want to share with the audience at our shows. So those ones kind of, again, we're not really deciding the music. It kind of comes from what they want to do and the stories that were really important to them, or the songs that were really important to them. So we're often just sort of given the songs and then uh, we make the show out of it. And it's not necessarily stuff that we would have picked because music, I think, is, as we all know, there's certain songs that can hit you, and a song that might not resonate with me resonates really deeply with someone else. So, and because we're such a collaborative group, that we can get anything coming back at us. Like I never thought the QSO would play Dave Matthews, for example, but we have because we invited people to tell their story, and that's the song that they chose for us. So, um, yeah, it's kind of nice because there isn't a really rigid format to how we curate uh, these shows. It's pretty wide open, and I like to think of it as like when I say we, it's myself and the sort of team within the orchestra of collaborators and people that I've been working with for a long time. We can kind of decide what way we want to go, and there isn't really a precedent to what we're doing exactly, so we can kind of make our own path and make our own decisions about what we want to do and what we feel is important. Um, and we have found that that has resonated, and we've been able to build an audience throughout Canada that has kind of been interested in what we're doing and kind of the way we go about it as well. So yeah, I would say for curating, it's kind of like it's a case by case basis, and we just try to keep it open and creative and fun and what's going to be interesting, an interesting show to put together.
Yeah, and so I also saw that you guys are involved with animations. Wanna, add a little bit more about what you guys do specifically with the animation side of things?
Yeah, for sure. So we've had the good fortune over the years to um, be able to branch off into other like art forms. And in 2018, I think it was, we worked with a really great stop motion animation team to develop a short video, music video kind of thing that sort of tells a story of these young queer folks. They're kind of like there's three different stories in the piece. It's about 5 or so minutes long, and it kind of tells the story of these three lone queer trans individuals and how they kind of like they're on their own journeys, and then they eventually cross paths and meet together and kind of become their own sort of chosen family. And it's set to one of the songs that we put on an album in 2018, all of covers, but arranged for our ensemble. And one of the songs was Rita McNeil, who's a very well-known Canadian singer-songwriter who was big in the 80s, 90s, mostly. And one of her songs, our guitar player, Tom Gill, arranged and sang on this recording. And yeah, it became this 5 minute stop motion animation that ended up screening in film festivals all around the world. And TIFF just played it again in June during Pride. Uh, but it was a really fun and kind of left field project for a lot of us who have not been involved in filmmaking so much or animation, certainly. So it's really cool to work with a totally different team and to kind of see up close and personal what that's like to work on animation. And I don't know, Hugo, if it's something that can be if I think there's time, like if you want to share it or if it's able to be screened over Zoom, is that something you think we could do?
Yeah, I don't actually have the link for that animation. You said it's on, say, Vimeo or something?
I could put it in the chat.
Oh, sure. Hey guys, raise your hand if you guys want to see an animation made that was yeah, you guys want to see an animation? All right. Perfect. Let me change your permissions here.
Oh, we have a stop motion person in the room already. There you go. If you go there and then you can just there's a Vimeo link on embedded on there.
Let me Yeah, see this okay? Sharing? Thumbs up? Yep, all right.
Joys we shared when we were young, magic carpets that we rode, the friends we made, the hills we've climbed, all this and more has shaped our lives. I know we'll reach the sky tonight. Look and see how far we've come, standing in our brightest night. This I see you smile. The happiness we've come to know whenever we outride the storm. I know we reach the sky tonight. Look and see how far we've come. Standing in our brightest night. This is what the dreamers die.
So, guys, raise your hand if you really enjoyed that little video directed by Shaun Brodie over here.
But well, I didn't direct it.
Produced it. Produced
Yeah,
it?
yeah.
Sorry, produced.
Um, and just to address the comments about how long it took, it actually didn't take years. We didn't have that long, but I believe we started it in January, or the animation team started in January, and we first screened it in June of 2018. So they did all that work in probably 4 months. Um, but we didn't have a huge budget, but they were a really great team and just yeah, did an incredible job. I would go to the studio every Friday to visit and see how things were going, and so I got to see kind of like piece by piece how they would put together and how the shots were done, and yeah, it was so cool to see how that animation world works and using like physical dolls and then just doing like short scenes and putting it all together. It's really fascinating, that art form. And I have so much respect for anyone who does that because it's so like it takes so much detailed and dedicated work. It's awesome. I would encourage anyone the director, Daniel Sterling Altman, he's the lead animator and director. He has lots of good stuff. If you just look him up on Vimeo, uh, he's got lots of great films on there. If you like that, I think you'd like the rest of his work as well. And the dolls, they're all crocheted dolls that the other co-creator, it was Daniel and myself and another collaborator, Stephen, who kind of created this whole piece and like the concept and the story and putting it all together. Um, and Stephen and I were out walking one day in Kensington Market, and there was an art market of those different stalls of different kinds of artists. And there was a woman there who had all these naked crochet dolls, and her whole practice was creating these dolls as sort of a body positivity thing. So they're all different body sizes and people that have had mastectomies or whatever might be. And she would get commissioned by people to make dolls that reflect that person as a way to sort of like learn to love themselves if their body has changed in some way or whatever it might be. So we came across these dolls, and Shasan Yaboa is the artist, and we just really loved the dolls. And then so between we had that song already, the idea of the dolls, and then incorporating stop motion. That's how the whole thing kind of came about. And then we ended up tracking down a great animation team to make it come to life. Um, so, oh yeah, Jamie's saying you have some idea, just a 5 second reel, how long that would take, and the attention to detail and all that. Yeah. Yeah, it's one thing I'm really proud of. And even though it's not that reflective of what we typically do in terms of like our live shows and the stories and the songs, kind of putting those things together. Um, I it's one of the things I'm most proud of in the last decade of this project because I just think it's a really cool thing that we somehow were able to make happen. So I guess that's another thing about running your own kind of project is you never really know what direction it's going to take or where you could go with it. And you have an idea or someone else has an idea and you can just sort of try and make it happen. And sometimes it does.
Yeah.
But sorry, go ahead, Hugo.
I don't know. Yeah, you finish your thought.
Oh, just because I'm not too familiar with the cooperative, and I'm sort of curious. I know there's quite a few people on the call, but I'm just curious about what people are, or some of you at least, like what you're up to and what you're looking to get from these talks, or like what your own sort of um, what your paths are, what your ambitions are musically or in life. Um, and how anything that I might be able to give from my own experiences that might could maybe shed some light on what you're interested in or what you want to do. And I'm happy, of course, to keep talking about the QSO and what we've done with that. But if there's more specific questions about stuff you're interested in or working on, um, I'm happy to hear that too. Oh, okay. So how does one get involved? Yeah, with the QSO, we've had kind of when it first came together, it wasn't a thing that we put out an announcement or auditions or anything because we didn't know if it was going to work or what it was. And I didn't want to be too public about this idea I had in case it was just a big failure. Um, so just with, I knew I wanted to be mostly queer musicians, but not entirely. And so I just talked with a couple of friends, like, fellow queer musician friends that I knew and who'd been working with in other projects. About the idea. I kind of told them and was like, who do you think, like, how should we put this together? And I basically knew that I wanted it to be a rhythm section with singers and then a chamber orchestra of like winds and strings. So we ended up going with violin, cello, French horn, trumpet, and oboe. That was the original lineup. And then uh, electric guitar, piano, bass, double bass, and drums, and then singers. And the initial incarnation in 2014, we just put together with people that we knew, or one of us knew, and we were able to find all those people. Um, and so that was the initial group, and most of those people are still part of it today. Um, but we've also expanded at times, or we've had to have subs in. So we've really, the community has really grown, and we have a pretty wide network of people that we've worked with now and people that we'll call on, depending on the scope of the show or who's available or not. Um, so yeah, we always want to have people on our radar of who would be available for things that might come up. And then the other thing we did 3 years ago, through COVID, we sort of had certain opportunities that fell away over the course of the pandemic. Some international touring stuff that we're going to be doing that never happened because of COVID. But during that time, the idea sort of came around to us that we could start a youth orchestra, a queer songbook youth orchestra, and sort of do what we've been doing for the previous many years, but open it up to a larger ensemble of queer and trans and allied youth players. So in 2022, we actually did form a youth orchestra, and it was the orchestra is sort of a hybrid of youth and mentors, professional mentors. So every section would have a professional player also in it, playing side by side with the youth. Um, and yeah, in 2022, is anyone here familiar with Beverly Glenn Copeland? He's an elder trans artist, songwriter, musician who's been putting music out since 1970. He's 81 years old now, and he lives in Hamilton. But he's a close friend and collaborator of the QSO, and someone who was putting music out for decades without much um, acknowledgement, or people weren't really noticing. There wasn't much of an audience for it. And only about 10 years ago, he was discovered by a Japanese record collector. And long story short, it's sort of his career exploded, and he's now like internationally known, and he's sort of being honored for a lifetime of work, which is for an elder trans artist to be recognized in his later years is a beautiful thing. But yeah, he's a close friend and collaborator of the Queer Songbook, and we've worked with him many times. So our first project with the youth orchestra was to work with him, and he always had written music imagining an orchestra was playing it, but he never had the opportunity to actually hear it played by an orchestra. So we had 8 of his songs um, arranged for full orchestra, and then we partnered with the Illuminato Festival in Toronto a few years ago, and then did a concert with Glenn and several other guest singers, all performing his music. So that was kind of the first project of the Queer Songbook Youth Orchestra. And it was a really beautiful, kind of profound project for the adults and the youth to be part of. And we've done a few other things with the youth orchestra, but it's kind of been on hiatus the last year or so because of just the complexity of the funding needed and the larger scope of that project. So it's something that we hope to get up and running again, but it just taking a bit of time to figure out how that's going to look and work. But for any sort of orchestral players on this call, and not just orchestral players, because we have rhythm section and singers as well. But if that's something that sounds interesting to you, then it's something I would encourage you to keep in touch with me about, because once we get it up and happening again, then it's something that hopefully some people could be involved in. Okay, Jamie's saying songwriter, composer, and animator, a lot of pixel animation, rotoscoping, scanography, stop motion. Okay, that's really cool. Jamie, you've done a lot more than I have. And are you working in animation currently, Jamie, or hobbyist? Okay, cool. Okay, minoring in art. Okay, cool. Are most people in the call like university age or into mid-20s or?
Yeah, I think it goes from about, um, yeah, Rhea said from 15 to 30.
Oh, 15 to 30. Okay, cool.
Actually,
Yeah,
speaking of sorry, did you have a thought? You can go ahead.
no, please go, Hugo.
So speaking of you know, age, I noticed you also have a youth program. I think it was in your bio as well, but there's a youth program associated with the Queer Songbook Orchestra. Can you tell us a little bit more about that as well?
Yeah, we just sort of realized, as I was saying about the pandemic, we had a lot of time to think about the direction of the project and what we wanted to do or maybe could do with it. And with all the sort of live opportunities during COVID evaporating, we had time to think about what else could we do and what's maybe closer to home that doesn't rely on touring or um, having to travel, which was of course not possible at that time. Uh, so in talking with other members of the group, the idea just sort of it was should have been obvious all along because a lot of us in the ensemble grew up playing in youth orchestras wherever we grew up. I'm from Saskatchewan myself, and I played in a youth orchestra there throughout high school. and then in university as well. When I was in Victoria, I played in the Victoria Youth Orchestra. So it was something I feel like I should have thought of sooner, but my focus was sort of in different directions. But then, yeah, one of our members just one day was like, "We should start a youth orchestra," and it just like a light bulb went off, and it seemed like the most obvious thing. Uh, and at that time, we had the time and I had the energy to try to make it happen. So I started working with someone to write some funding grants and start to think about what it would take to sort of do the outreach and find the young players to connect with. And it really seemed like there could be a lot of value uh, in forming an ensemble that was all about um, like a had an emphasis on queer and trans identity for young people in a musical context. And what we came to learn from young people that the youth that became part of it is that they didn't always feel comfortable being out in the ensembles they were in high school or in university. Um, there could still be a bit of a stigma or like a sort of macho energy in the brass section or whatever it might be that people didn't always feel comfortable being out in their other ensemble. So they sort of saw this as a place where they could pursue their interest in music and also be out totally and be surrounded by other queer and trans and allied uh, youth who a lot of them became friends. And at our very first meeting with the youth orchestra at the break, everyone was outside like exchanging Instagram uh, handles and everything to be able to stay in touch. So it was a really beautiful thing to kind of see how already those connections were being made and people were um, kind of welcoming this opportunity to connect in that way. And yeah, it's been really beautiful to see uh, a focus, like it's sort of a traditional orchestra in some ways, if you were to look at it, although more of a pop orchestra because it has a rhythm section and singers, but then all your violins and violas and flutes and everything. Um, and then, but it has this undercurrent of an identity that everyone connects to, and that everyone there is sort of working together to uplift in the stories we're telling and what the whole focus is on. So it was a really gratifying um, thing to work on and something that I'm really keen to get happening again because it's really special and unique. I searched around the internet when we were putting the idea together, and I couldn't find anything like that already exists anywhere. That was like a queer trans focused youth orchestra doing the kind of thing that we're doing. So it seems like something that should be there, and for young people in Toronto, it's kind of a unique thing to be able to be involved in. But the other part of that, and this gets into a little bit more of the kind of bureaucratic end of running an ensemble like this and a larger group. Oh, I'll come back to that. Juliet, do you want to ask a question?
Um, yeah, I was gonna ask about this youth ensemble. Like, does it run kind of like you have a bunch of rehearsals in a couple months span, and then you guys have some kind of tour, or like, because this doesn't run like year round, or it's not like an after school program sort of thing, is it?
Yeah, no, not exactly. It's the way we were running it previously is we would sort of figure out what the concert was going to be, and then we would rehearse for a couple of months leading up to that. And we haven't had kind of the funding and the infrastructure to sustain it on a more ongoing basis so that it could be happening year round or like an after school sort of thing that's has some regularity to it. Um, so yeah, what we've been able to manage up to this point, and again, as I mentioned, it has been on hiatus for the last year or so because of the complexity of everything. But yeah, what we were doing was uh, a run of rehearsals, ideally over a couple of months, and then the concert. So it's more of like a special thing that the players were able to fit into their schedules. Um, but again, especially with, I mean, university, but high school too, it gets so busy. So if we're doing, we do a holiday concert every year in December. And we have done that since 2015 with the QSO, and we, I think in 2022 had the youth orchestra be part of it. And just in December, it was so difficult to get, uh, you know, a time when everyone was available to rehearse. That we ended up, I think we rehearsed once or twice um, before that show, and we didn't have that many songs for that one, three or four songs that they were part of. Um, but it we kind of just made the best with the time we had, which wasn't always a lot. Um, but yeah, my hope in the future is that we'd be able to establish it as a more regular thing, and then there are more consistent rehearsals. And we haven't toured with the youth orchestra, um, but I have had interest from presenters and people in different places that have asked about it, if we'd be able to come play their festival or play in their theater with the youth orchestra. So it's hopefully something we would be able to do in the end. Um, but it's we need a bit more of a staff involved in the organization and yeah, there's a lot of complexity to that. So, and does that answer your question?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I can only imagine like how complex it is to coordinate so many different people's schedules and availabilities. Um, I was also curious about like the funding, like what granting bodies are you applying to?
Yeah, so just to give you a little background, and that's a really important question, so I'm glad you asked, um, in terms of the funding. But before we were applying for funding for that project, we decided to incorporate the Queer Songbook Orchestra as a nonprofit organization. So in the first, and this gets into the weeds a little bit in terms of like how businesses are run and like arts organizations, but I think important to know and stuff that I didn't really know when I was your ages. I kind of figured out later. So I think it's important to talk about and to have some awareness of. Much like doing your taxes, I nobody really told me how to do my taxes as an artist, and I had to like figure that out with some bumps along the way. So also questions I'm happy to answer. Uh, but yeah, we for the first many years, the Queer Songbook Orchestra was a business, a registered business, but it was a sole proprietorship. That's what it's called. And I was the sole owner. Um, and we had to be registered as a business because in order to get funding from, say, the Canada Council, they write the check in the name of the ensemble. So I would not be able to cash it if the ensemble was not a registered business. Um, so I registered as a business owned just by me, and for many years that's how we ran it. But when we were deciding to expand the ensemble and start to work with youth and try to be a partner with the TDSB, um, it didn't feel right at that point to still run it as a private business. And I'm not sure that we even could have. Um, so we just decided, well, we'll incorporate as a nonprofit organization. So at that point, I had to get a board of directors together. We have a 5-member board of directors, and they provide the oversight to the organization and, funding decisions that are made and keeping an eye on the books. And basically, for all the years prior, I was the owner and like ran the business. Um, and now, since incorporating, I'm not in charge. The board of directors are in charge. Um, so it's kind of a flip on how things are done, but it provides the necessary oversight and everything that was needed for an organization that's expanding in the ways that we were. Um, so once we did all the legal work to incorporate, then it also opened up some different avenues for funding because you can apply for different things when you're a nonprofit that you can't when you're not. Um, but yeah, so Canada Council was a big one. And we've had pretty good success since the beginning of the QSO with the Canada Council. Um, they funded, for example, the animation that we watched and a cross Canada tour that we did that same year in 2018. We toured from the Yukon to Newfoundland, all like smaller, mid-sized cities across Canada. Um, so they were doing a special funding program that year, and so we were able to get a larger grant to do these bigger projects. And then similarly in 2021, or I think it was a sort of COVID related program to get things kind of like going again. There were some special projects that we were able to get funding for the youth orchestra to get that up and going. So that's for sure been our biggest funder for the QSO as a whole. But also the Toronto Arts Council, we had not for a while now, but we have had some funding from the Ontario Arts Council. So we have had from all 3 branches of those public funding bodies. And there have been some private donors and some small scale sponsors as well, and private donors, but yeah, that's been the bulk of it. And getting into fundraising as a whole, it's its own entire world that I didn't really have any training or experience in prior. And yeah, so I've been learning a lot as this goes along about how to try to find the money, to keep your ambitions going.
Thanks for sharing some of that. It's yeah, it's good to like hear, or I'm curious about that kind of information specifically because I'm hosting a jam session that happens twice a month. We're like a collective. There's like 6 or 7 of us that are organizing jam sessions twice a month. And we haven't incorporated yet, but we've like started talking about the possibility. And right now we're charging like a really small fee at the door, um,
Yeah.
just to like kind of keep everyone afloat and like no one's losing money because of this. Like in the past, we've done it with like no charge at all, and it very quickly just starts to like eat at your own pocket. And we're trying to do something to uplift the community. We're trying to. It's a networking event. It's the only jam in the city that has a male and female co-host. So I like to
Yeah.
think that it's a place that can feel really welcoming to people, regardless of gender.
Mhm.
And we do want to take it to the next level, but it's kind of like or we would like to make it a free event, but we would really need like grant funding or some kind of funding to make that feasible.
What
So
kind of venue do you do it in?
it's at a bar.
Yeah.
And yeah, just every week, every time we do it, it just gets better and better. The attendance keeps going up. We had worked out a deal with the bar to give us a cut of sales, but they want us to go weekly. They want us to do it every week, and we just can't commit to that. It's
Mm.
a little too demanding.
Yeah.
So we're still trying to figure out. We're just, floating, navigating through this process, much like how you described, where you're like, I'm not really 100% sure what I'm doing, but let's figure it out together.
Yeah. And I mean, I think there's a lot to that, just to kind of, if you think you're onto something, like following your intuition and seeing where it can take you. But it's also, you have to be careful too, because as you said, it's starting to eat into your own pocket. And I, same thing with me, like I lost money for sure with this project in the earlier days where I wasn't, I mean, there've been a lot of unpaid hours, certainly. And then there was times where I just wasn't, or we were doing something, but I wanted to make sure everyone else was paid and there wasn't a lot to go around. And I, yeah, so I took on some personal debt just to keep things afloat at times. And yeah, I mean, I've been able to deal with that since, and it's not an issue anymore, but I really cared about the project and I was going to make it happen one way or another. And that was one of the ways to keep it going. So, but it's not something I would advise because it can get you into trouble.
Yeah, it's
And
really
banks don't
a
have a lot of
labor of love.
sympathy with your artistic projects when it comes to like paying interest on your line of credit or whatever it might be. So,
Yeah.
um,
Luckily, at this point, no one's taken on too much personal debt from it. And we've managed, like, we've just started actually paying ourselves for the work that we're doing, like a really
right.
small fee for each
Mhm.
session that we do. But yeah, like you said, it's a labor of love. Like it has to happen one way or another because it's just such a beautiful thing that you have to make it happen. So
Yeah.
you'll do anything for it. But yeah, it's a slippery slope when it comes to taking on that personal debt. And yeah,
Yeah. And I mean, I think that's for a lot of projects that have become sustainable or like become well known, they had their early days, where it took those people to be sticking with it and not giving up on it in order to get it to a place where it was sustainable. Um, so yeah, it often takes some sacrifice by someone or some few people in order to get something going. That means more to the community and to to the audiences and the people involved. Um, but I was gonna, we have our other sort of community and youth programming that I wanted to touch on is our, and I mentioned being a TDSB partner. So a couple years ago, we became an official partner of the Toronto District School Board. The QSO did. And so we've been going into schools, mostly elementary schools, kindergarten to grade six, seven, eight. Um, and we've developed this programming for students that really mirrors our regular sort of shows with the storytelling and the songs and stories and all that, but sort of cater to a young audience. Um, so we'll play music that mostly music that is more familiar to kids, um, but also putting in music and stories that they would not be familiar with, but that we think are good educational sort of pieces to have in there. Um, and those shows are largely centered around um, queer and trans empowerment for students that might be discovering their own identities, um, to sort of try to uplift and empower them, and also to educate those students who are maybe not discovering that they are maybe queer or trans, um, to have a deeper understanding of those experiences and those identities, to have more empathy with their classmates and peers. Um, so anti-bullying is sort of like a, a strong theme in those shows. Um, and yeah, the last few years we've been doing these, we call them our TDSB Pride Tours. And every June for sure, we do a week or two in schools. And we're starting to, throughout other parts of the year, also uh, fit in some school shows. And that's been another really interesting and gratifying um, experience to go into schools and see how young kids respond uh, to what we're doing. And we've found that playing music that kids know is really a key to um, sort of unlocking uh, those moments with them. We would do a couple years ago, we were doing Watermelon Sugar, and there would just be a big dance party. This past June, we incorporated Pink Pony Club, and it was crazy to see how almost every kid in every school we went to knew every word to that song, and how excited they were to hear it, to hear us play it. It was wild. Um, but yeah, it's been really fun with that project to sort of try to find the right pieces that are sort of educational, but also engaging for students so they're not just bored the whole time. And yeah, so we kind of have the three branches of the QSO. There's the Queer Songbook Orchestra as it is and has been since 2014, which is still developing different material and shows and everything. And that group will tour. Um, as I mentioned, we've played every province and two of the territories in Canada. Um, so we've gotten around quite a bit. And then there's the youth orchestra, which I've said much about now, and again is currently on hiatus. And then the kids' school programming, which is an ongoing kind of regular thing. So and just to sort of reflect back to what I was saying earlier, how I got rejected from journalism school in 2013, it was. I now to think about that and what has sort of come, well, what that led me to which if I hadn't been rejected, I never would have started the Queer Songbook. And to see like how it's grown and everything, everyone that's been connected to it and the impact it's had and the people that have been involved and all that, like from now where I sit today, I'm so grateful to have been rejected from journalism school because I think I would have had, I mean, some totally different career. Not that journalism was like a stable thing to be going into, uh, either. It was probably not a great idea to try to do that, but I'd be doing something totally different now. I'd have a totally different life. And the people that I've met through the QSO, the opportunities I've had, the headaches, the struggles, all of that, it's been a really enriching to my life in general. And I'm really grateful to have kind of taken that leap 10 years ago to see just to see what happens. So I don't know if any of you have like your ideas or like projects you want to do or where you're at in terms of playing in different ensembles or wanting to start your own thing, whatever it might be. And of course, it will always work out differently for different people and different times. But I am one to advocate for kind of trusting yourself and going with your intuition, but also working really hard to make it happen because these things don't happen without the work behind it and all the, as I referenced earlier, the unpaid hours and kind of sacrifices you might have to make to make it happen because they don't happen overnight and they don't necessarily happen easily. Um, but they can happen and it can be really rewarding and really kind of like shift the direction of your life. Does anyone else have anything they're working on or um, projects you might be involved in or want to start in the future that you want to talk about? Maybe it's mostly a bit of a shy crew, which is totally fine too. Unless I'm asked to come and talk in this kind of setting, I never put my hand up or ask questions. I'm way too shy to speak in groups normally. Um, but that's another thing that QSO kind of like helped me with because now I have to stand on stage with a microphone and talk about stuff. And often it's the stuff we deal with and the stories we tell are often quite personal. So I've, told kind of intimate details of my life to audiences that I never would have dreamt of doing before. But I found myself in these situations where it's felt more easy and natural. Um, but normally very shy and doesn't like to talk in groups. Okay, Honolulu is looking into starting a music program for youth in your city, which is amazing. What can I ask what city you're in? In Milton. Okay, cool. Are there existing programs there that you're kind of looking to or that you've been a part of growing up?
Yeah, right now I'm actually because I have a sister who works at the like our rec center. So in partnership with this co-op that I'm doing right now, I got her to kind of get me into there so I can play and talk about music with the kids at that center. Um, and I'm talking with some people at because we have another art center in town. So I'm trying to talk to them about starting some sort of like drop-in program for youth because I know for me, I feel like I got into music later on than most people. And I
Mm.
want to give people the opportunity to kind of see that music is important and it's very relevant and it's possible to have it as a career, but also just for you to take it seriously and have it part of your life. Because I feel like in school, there's a lot of do STEM, do science and math, and you have to become a doctor, you have to become an engineer, whatever. And I want to show people like, no, there's opportunities in music. It's a real career. So
Mhm.
I'll let you guys know how that turns out.
And yeah, I mean, there's so many different types of careers too, um, that you can go from like studying and playing in different groups to then like, well, there's all kinds of avenues you can go with the experience you get from being a player, and like there's all types of admin sort of roles that you can go of that your experience and knowledge of from being a musician kind of informs uh and it, helps you to get those kind of jobs. And yeah, I mean, there's so many sort of industry roles in the music world that um it's not like you make it or don't as a player. It's like you can always be a player, but if you find you're not making a living or it's not being that easy, there's you can pivot in all these different ways with that experience. And I think, the sort of creative thinking you get as a musician and your ability to work in ensembles and with groups and all that, it's all like great for future careers, whatever they might be. Um, and I think it could be an advantage to those who didn't have those experiences. Um, and I was just thinking while you're talking about the youth program, one thing I would recommend, and I've done this a bit with the QSO or with our youth orchestra in Toronto, is if you need, like, sponsorships are really helpful because they can either provide some money or in-kind sponsorships, which is in-kind just means like giving you physical stuff of whatever that company makes. So it could be like someone donates beer for a show you're doing, and then you can sell that and make money. But those are kind of like in kind. But um, Long and McQuaid has a really good community program. And I've hit them up before. They on their website they have a application, and you can kind of like explain what your project is and what you'd be asking for. So for a drop-in, for example, if you just needed like a drum kit and a bass amp and a guitar amp and that kind of thing, I'd recommend going to them and doing an application for that because they do. And I mean, Long McQuaid's kind of a big corporation that's kind of taken over the music store business in across Canada. And there's not, I think they've driven out some mom and pop more shops, but they are kind of the main player now, and they do have a community mandate. So, they're there and they are helping So I think it's good to take advantage of that. And if you do need equipment or something along the way, I would encourage you to go to them. Hmm. Do floors open if anybody else
I
has
have
something?
kind of a it's kind of a specific question, but there's time, I guess. So here we go. Um, we're coming up on the 1 year anniversary of this jam session that I host, and we want to do something really special. Um, I've I've mentioned like how we should reach out to like press and get like some press involved. But I would love to know if you have any other ideas of like just how we can make it more special, how we can give more to our community. Um, we want to do like a few prizes, like maybe like a raffle of some kind where we give away like studio time, a studio session, or a lot of us, like the organizers, a lot of us have different services that we can offer. So we want to have like a few prizes and then a bunch of merch and like give away some free t-shirts, give away some free like buttons. Um, do you have any other ideas as to like how we could, um, yeah, get more like donations or just how to make it extra special?
Yeah, what city are you in? Can I ask?
Montreal.
Oh, you're Montreal. Okay. Um, yeah, I haven't ever done a raffle or like silent auction or that kind of thing uh, at our shows, but they're very common and I think a great way to fundraise. And again, those in-kind donations that I mentioned before are, I think, largely what those kind of raffles and silent auctions are built from. So if you can go to some companies that you like or businesses that kind of align with what you're doing, and get them to donate, like whether it's a gift basket or a gift card for studio time or whatever it might be. Um, that's I think a really good idea. And yeah, something that also makes it unique from your regular jams where it's a special occasion and moment. Um, and also congrats on doing a year of it. That's great. You said twice a month?
Yeah,
Twice a month for a full year. Yeah, that's very impressive.
thank
Uh,
you. It's been a lot of hard work.
yeah, I can feel that. And I mean, I don't do QSO twice a month. We're not out there performing that often unless we're on tour. But like months will go by without us doing anything. And then, you're working towards whatever's next. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, I would maybe just like the hosts or kind of the regular players have a chance to like play whatever your favorite songs are, um, to make it kind of a unique night, or bring in a bunch of cupcakes for people.
Yeah, I
Uh,
was trying to think of like food wise, like how we could get some some food in there, like free food for people. Um, but I was struggling to figure out like what kind of food like would be easily like transported or yeah, I don't know. Still thinking about
yeah.
it.
My advice there would be to check with the bar first,
True.
because I've gotten into trouble in the past with we did a birthday thing and we brought in a cake that a friend had made, and the bar was not happy about that, about having brought in food from outside that we were serving to people. So venues can be a bit prickly about that. So I would just talk to them first, and make sure it's cool.
Yeah. Yeah, so on Long and McQuaid's website, they have a place where you can apply for like an in-kind donation.
Yes. Yeah, it's like their community support or something like that. Um, but I'm pretty sure it links to it from their main website.
Okay. I'll check that out because that would be sweet. That'd be a dope prize to have like whatever, $50 to Long and McQuaid or something.
Yeah, totally. And they might well give you some gift cards or um yeah, like some reeds or guitar strings or something like that
Yeah.
to help out. They gave us when we first were doing our youth orchestra, um I had written asking for some in-kind support, and they ended up giving us like 50 music stands or something, which we needed. It was really a really useful um, gift, and they gave it to us for free, which was really nice.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So they are kind of like the big corporate monolith in music, um, but they also will support and help out. So I think they have like a department that sort of is tasked with taking these requests and like deciding what they're going to support.
Okay, cool. I'm gonna try that. It looks like we lost him.
Yeah, I don't see him in the call anymore. Maybe we can take a couple minutes to see if he'll come back and again then we'll regroup.